Your FDD was just issued. You're now a franchisor. You have people interested in your franchise. What comes next? Do you just send them your FDD? Yes, but not really. And we're going to discuss that. The most important thing to know as a new franchisor is that your FDD, it's a legal document. It's a regulated mandatory disclosure document, and it will absolutely scare people away from your franchise. Every franchisor has an FDD. Every franchisor issues the FDD, but it's a legal document. It's scary. It's large. It has estimated data that may go above what a franchisee should expect. The key is that it shouldn't be the central point of your franchise sales process. So many startup franchisors make the mistake. They're new to franchising. They send out their FDD to prospective franchisees, and they find out that they're scaring people away. Someone who's really interested is not taking steps backwards and it's not so interested anymore. And it makes sense. So what does this all mean? It means during your franchise development process, you should have been working on your sales process also. Something we discuss often, something that's discussed often in our community. But if you haven't, and you now have your FDD and you want to know what's next, well, what comes next is a franchise sales process. So your FDD, it's just a legal disclosure. You need to disclose it, but there's a time and place. And you need to create a framework for your prospective franchisees so they better understand the FDD and they don't intermix it with their understanding of how valuable your franchise opportunity could be. The key, you need a franchise sales process. And in this process, right, from the very beginning, you should be communicating the story behind your brand, the advantages of becoming a franchisee, unit level economics associated with your brand, a compelling why you, why now, why someone should be buying your franchise at the moment. And you need to bundle this all together. Now, how do we do this? Well, the most obvious things, right? You start with your franchise sales website, a digital brochure or a downloadable guide, and video. So startup franchisors, sometimes your franchise sales website is just a web page added to your consumer website. That's okay. Best practices, eventually you should have a separate franchise sales website. And on that, that's going to be the story you're telling. The why you, why now, the brand story about your team and what's compelling, right? The unique differentiators about your brand. On that website, when franchisees first contact you, the call to action should be learn more or download your ownership guide. They're going to fill out their information, download a guide, and the guide should be about the franchise opportunity itself. And on your website, there should be compelling video showing what your business looks like, you telling your story as a founder. Now, what does this all do? Well, if your prospective franchisee either knows you directly and says, hey, I'm interested, or they find you on the web, either way, you're going to refer them at that starting point to the web. They're going to look at the website. They're going to learn more about your brand. So you're conditioning their knowledge about the brand. After that, you need to educate your candidates about the steps or the process to franchise ownership. And this is just one example. There's so many variations. And many times you put this on your website, which is the steps to ownership. And the first would be to fill out a contact form where you download our guide to owning a franchise. Then the next step maybe is talk with a team member. Okay. So we haven't disclosed the FDD yet. You're going to have someone trained with franchise sales, set up a mini discovery call, a mini introduction, do maybe a basic PowerPoint or a basic deck about the franchise opportunity, covering points that are in your downloadable guide, and having a preliminary conversation. During that conversation, you're going to also advise the franchisee that under the franchise laws, we're required to disclose to them the franchise disclosure document. And maybe you've pre-disclosed it to them even before the call. I'd recommend it. Please know that that's a legal document. It's a regulatory disclosure. At a certain point, it's going to be important for you to review with your lawyer and let them have that entire framework. The key here is that you're not just handing someone or delivering to them electronically the FDD. Because if that's the only thing you're doing, you're not going to sell franchises. So they fill out a form, download an ownership guide, talk with a team member. And during this process, you've now digitally disclosed them with the FDD, which I'll talk about a little more. So they have that FDD. Maybe you do set up another call where you give a brief overview of the FDD. Now here it's critical. You cannot give them legal advice. You need to advise them to that they'll be reviewing this with a lawyer, but give them an overview. Say, item 5, this is where we disclose our initial franchise fees, for your type of territory. The initial franchise fee would be X dollars. Item 7, this is our estimate for starting a location, total estimated costs, including reserve capital. Item 19, right? And item 19 is where you have your financial performance representations. Never mislead. Always be completely candid. Do not provide any information that goes outside of the information that's specifically disclosed in the FDD. But the point I'm making here is get them acclimated to the FDD and for them to understand the role it serves, okay? And then maybe after that part or that presentation, you have a follow-up presentation, evaluate potential territories, require the candidate to submit a formal or final application, and then the next step would be signing a franchise agreement. The key is that the biggest mistake you can make as a new franchisor is to use your FDD as part of the franchise sales process. It's going to be involved in the process, but that's not your main selling point. You need other tools and assets. Most important, franchise sales website, downloadable franchise opportunity guide, videos, brand videos, why you, why now, founder story, all the things that are going to create that relationship with the franchisee candidate, allow them to understand what ownership is all about, and then going over with them the process so they understand the role of the franchise disclosure document, which you should also be talking to your legal team about, right? Your franchise disclosure document can be electronically disclosed if it's done the right way through like DocuSign and other services with electronic signatures. So this process should be automatic. And even then, when you're electronically disclosing the FDD, whether it's by email or DocuSign, you should have other communications with that franchisee, emails or other automated drip sequences like videos and other guides that talk about the business elements, right? So they could balance everything out and not be overwhelmed by a franchise disclosure document.